Dirty folks. Dirty folks. Dirty folks. Know your soul. Know your soul.
All right, guys. So I was watching playback, and they had an excerpt from a guy who was a racist that didn't want to be racist because he was on the panel with all black people, but he was racist. I'll put the link in the description so you can see the full excerpt. I'm taking a clip of a clip, but there was a part that stood out to me. Now I need to preface this by saying the gentleman that's talking, he calls himself white, but he also says his ethnicity is German, Irish, Italian, and a quarter Mexican, right? So he's a mutt, but he has these racial views on who he would date based on ethnic groups and things of that nature. Okay, that's fine. One of the things he said, and we're about to get into it, but he said that blacks were the least intelligent people. And I kind of agree with him, but not for why he said it. Now, let's get into this clip. I'm going to play it, then we're going to come through. I'm going to do my thing and all that.
I just want to preface this by saying this, okay? I, of all people, okay? I'm a friend to all people.
Oh, that's how you know some crazy shit.
I love black people, okay? I love Hispanics, I love Asians. But
You
here's
know
the
where
thing.
this is going. Whenever this starts up like that, you know where it's going.
You know where it's going, okay? And I told Sneeko this, we call this race realism, okay? Which is to say that race is real. Like, it's not.
Okay, let me pause right there. He said race is real. Race is real. But he's about to describe something that has nothing to do with race. I want to show you guys a quick definition of race. Because people confuse race with ethnic group, with culture, with all type of things. So I got this chart right here I want to share with you guys. And I'm going to read it through with you. And I'm going to make it make sense. Race. Race refers to the concept of dividing people into groups on the basis of various sets of physical characteristics and the process of ascribing social meaning to those groups. Now, when they say social meaning, this is what they mean. They mean commonality. So, for instance, I expect a Dutchman to look a certain way based on the characteristics where he came from. Flip side, I expect an Asian to look different than a Russian, although they're both basically Mongol, right? The difference between, but that's the difference between race. So you can look at somebody and immediately identify what their racial undertone is. Now the flip side of that is, it doesn't always work. Because if you call a Japanese Chinese, see how they start making furniture move. So, but generally speaking, you think that because they have similar physiological attributes and characteristics, right? So, that's race. Now, ethnicity describes the culture of people in a given geographic region, including their language, heritage, religion, and customs. Now, let me read that again because the word culture is in there, and they are describing a culture, but culture even drops down to subculture. So, ethnicity, an ethnic group, describes the culture of people in a given geographic region, including their language, heritage, religion, and customs. Now, that's a lot better defined when you live in a nation that is not a melting pot like the United States. Like, for instance, just mainland United States. If the United States was in Europe, we would be 48 different nations. And we'll have probably 30 different languages, 12 different religions. You would need a passport to go from New York to New Jersey. But because America is a melting pot, we all share, generally speaking, the same language, the same religion, and the same customs. Even if you give a person 2 generations off the boat, their children and definitely their grandchildren will be Americanized, but there is no American ethnicity. So it gets kind of tricky, which is why you have to break down to subculture. So let's explain what a culture is real quick. Culture are the customs, art, social institutions, and achievements of a particular nation, people, or other social group. We're going to say the blacks are the other social group. Now, where it blends in is, what they will blend in is the customs with the heritage. They're two different things, but the heritage is based on ethnicity. The customs are based on what's passed down, right? I just wanted to explain that real quick because he's about to say race, and he's already saying race, but really what he's describing or ascribing is culture. Because if you're only going by race, then anybody, you can tell an American, an indigenous American Negro from an Ethiopian or a Nigerian. So you can't just go off color, but America are colorists. So they'll just subscribe everything to a color and say that that's part of the culture. And what he's talking about is culture, but he keeps calling it race. People keep convoluting things. But let's go back to the initial, before we do. Let me show you something real quick before we do. While I was doing this, as I looked at this chart, I want to explain something to you. If you look at this gentleman right here on the skateboard, at a glance you would think he was black. He's not. He is a Pacific Islander, right? If you look at this young lady right here, from the back you would think she was white. The only reason that I know she's not is because of the feathers in her head in the background, that she is Native American. And I lived in South Dakota for a minute, and every Native American looks just like her. But at a glance, I would have thought Italian, right? So even when you go based on what they call the characteristics and process of ascribing social meaning to groups, the race and the ethnic group don't match up. In America, this is a melting pot. So when you're in America, you have to go off culture. Make sense? Makes sense. So let's go back to what he was saying about black people being the least intelligent based on race.
Like it's not fake, it's not skin deep, race is real. There are different races and there's meaningful differences. And one of the things is that on average the races have different IQs. And so on average, Asians have the highest IQ, and on average, blacks have the lowest IQ. And that's why I told Sneeko.
Hold on real quick. What's hilarious down here is this young gentleman in the lower left corner. He's like a tri-mutt. He's Asian, black, and Mexican. So he's just rooting for the Asian side. That's hilarious. So he's rooting because Asians are the highest, but then look at his face when blacks are the lowest. But both of them are him. So if he ascribes himself by racial undertones, he would be average at best, right?
And that's why I told Sneeko. And no, that's average, okay? It's not. I'm not saying black people are dumb. I just want to preface this by saying.
Okay. Now, on average, this is where I give him credit, but he don't know what the hell he's talking about. But I kind of agree with him based on culture. Blacks, especially black men, test the lowest and have the lowest scholastic results, but that is because of your generational curse, the Keisha toddler. That's not because you are born inherently less intelligent. I have a 163 IQ. I'll pass a paper bag test, but I am the paper bag. I'm right on the board. That doesn't make me any less intelligent. A 163 IQ is a 99.997. That means only like 3% of the world is smarter than me. I'm tawny as shit. What matters is, on the flip side, because I used to date the Keishas, they don't care about education. They just care about results. They're only mothers on picture day. So you have children. You go from a situation like indentured servitude, I refuse to call it slavery. You go from a place from indentured servitude, where you weren't allowed to read, to having to work at 12 years old until they made labor laws, so you didn't have to read. You could, at that time, really nobody could read. America was run by people with less than a sixth grade education. Um, there was no grand difference between a black guy in Alabama and a white guy that lived in a trailer park in West Virginia, right? Then you got into the boomer era, where everybody wanted to go to college, mostly so they could dodge the draft. Um, and where the differences started taking place was the way the kids were taught. So me being a person that dated the teachers before, I can't count on my 10 fingers. I can't count on my 10 fingers how many times I've heard black women who have a kid like, my kid's smart. Like, what's your favorite color? Car? Like, no, your favorite color. 3, they're not taught anything. The amount of women that's told me anything that their child needs to learn, they'll learn in school when they're 5 years old, to put kids behind the 8 ball so they don't know their colors, don't know the alphabet, don't know how to count to 10. The way that the colors, the culture of the colors is bent to cripple the kids, because these they should not be mothers. These people should not be mothers. They should be breeders. They should not be subsidized to be, but that's their job. America knows that these are horrible human beings, so they subsidize them for the school to prison pipeline. That's why they test you at 8 years old, because they know at 8 years old if you're gonna be a criminal, because they know if your mom ain't shit. And then they take the smart kids and put them in gifted classes, or bus them to a different school, or they remove them. They section you off. The system works. The system is built to make sure that the kids who may have a positive impact on the world get to learn, while the ones who moms is like, they'll learn when they get in school, and they already behind before their first day starts, that they'll go to jail, or they'll just be breeders for the, and hopefully have some sons later that'll go to jail to keep the school to prison pipeline going on. So it's not at all that blacks are inherently less intelligent than any other race. We just have the worst fucking women on earth, man. I wish I could have y'all understand that, man, because y'all blame a lot. 90% of the things y'all blame on racism is really Tyler. And this is one of those things. Anyway, but I need y'all, as always, to learn how y'all train y'all toddlers so y'all can stop this generational curse quite flat. As always, man, love each other as you love yourself. Feed the pack.
Dirty folks. Dirty folks. Dirty folks. No
Toddler tales are crazy stories that could only happen to me. Each tale is endorsed by Toddlerology and the Marry Your Secretary courses. In a world where toddlers are only loyal to her employer, learn the skills needed to train your toddler to work at your relationship like she works at her job. There's courses for every level of your relationship status, including polygamy. Need support? Join scheduled study groups with other Toddlerology members. Click the link below. And now, back to today's story.